Now that you know the 4 primary goals for this course, we're ready to take our next step. Before we dive into writing our first line of code, let's take a moment to see what the final product of this course looks like on a few different devices. If this is your first time here, welcome to my channel. Every week, I give you seasoned advice on how to build professional Android apps in bite-sized chunks. Now, let's take a look at what we'll be covering. Throughout this course, I'm going to be using and testing our application on 3 different devices. The first one is a Google Pixel 2 XL, and it will stand in as just our basic non-foldable phone. Next up, I have a Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 2, which of course is going to be our foldable device. And finally, I have a Google Pixel Slate. Now technically this isn't an Android device, it's a Chrome OS device, but since they're all capable of running Android applications, it will stand in as our Android tablet just fine. Don't worry if you don't have access to all of these different kinds of devices. In fact, most of you probably only have a few of these ones laying around. As I mentioned earlier, Google has great support built into their emulators to allow you to emulate these kinds of devices. I'll dive into how to set those up later on. But it just feels more impactful to be able to test on devices like this if you have access to them. Now, let's turn our attention to the app. Let's look at what the final product of this course looks like. Here I am going to show this to you on a Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 2. Now I chose this device because I think it showcases the best properties of our application. Our application is relatively simple. It only has 3 screens, and I'm looking at the very first one here. This one is just a portal to the other 2 screens. If I tap the first button, you can see I'm taken to a screen which just provides information about my display. It shows the width and height in DP, as well as something called size classes, which we'll get into a little bit more later on. This part is relatively uninteresting. You can see when I rotate the device, we definitely do have rotation support. I'll put it back into its upright position, and now I'm going to fold the device, just like this. And you can see the information on screen has changed. Now it says this is in book mode. That's because I'm holding it like I would be reading a book naturally. And the information on here has been changed to show me information about the hinge, where it is on the screen, the size of it, and other pieces of information that the OS has to offer. Now if I take the device and I rotate it, this puts it into what's called Tabletop Mode, because this is excellent if you wanted to sit the device down on a table and say, watch a video. The information is relatively the same, except now it's telling me that the hinge is going in the opposite orientation. I'll orient this back up, I'll fold it back out, and let's go back to the previous screen so that we can see how we can use this information in our application. Back on the application home screen, if I press on the second button, you can see I'm taken to a list of numbers from 1 to 50. This is what it looks like on phones and other smaller screen devices. This implements what's called a master detail view. So if I press on, say, one of these numbers, you can see I go to a detail view, which gives me information about the number I just pressed. I can go back to the list, press another number, and get the same result. On a tablet, I would have a list on the left and, say, details on the right, unless I have a foldable device, in which case I'll fold the device right down the center, and you can see I get a very similar result. I still have my numbers on the left with details on the right, and as I press different numbers, you can see the details on the right change. If I orient this in the opposite direction, in tabletop mode, you can see the information is then stacked from top to bottom, and I get the exact same behavior. Even though this is a simple application, it will teach you all of the fundamentals that you need to build this in a more complex app in line with the 4 goals that I presented earlier on in the course. It's simple so that we can focus on these goals without distraction, not because I'm leaving out important information that you're going to need whenever you go and build your app someday. Next, let's take a look at the starter code for this course and get our IDE set up.